Welcome to Losing a Child, Always Andy's Mom. On this podcast, we journey through the devastating experience of the death of a child. Grief is seldom discussed openly in our culture, and the death of a child makes people feel even more uncomfortable. We approach the topic openly and honestly, speaking to people who have lost loved ones and experts who help care for them. Whether you are a parent experiencing loss or someone who wants to support another going through this tragedy, this podcast strives to offer hope and help.
Welcome to episode 138 of Losing a Child, Always Andy's Mom. I'm Marcy Larson, Andy's mom. So I want to start out today by just telling you how this all took place. So if you are watching the video version of this, you will see that this interview was done in person, which might be a little surprising considering they live in St. Louis, Missouri, and I am in Grand Rapids, Michigan. So the story behind that is that a few weeks ago, I got an email from a woman who said she worked with my husband and she had this couple that were dear, dear friends of hers and that they had lost their little girl and that they were writing a book. And that book was going to be released in April. And she thought that they would be great guests to have on the show. So I reached out to this wonderful couple, Ella's mom and dad, who you'll be meeting here in a second. And yes, they were releasing this book. And it turns out they were releasing the book at the same time I was going to actually be in St. Louis. And in addition to releasing the book, they were having their annual fundraiser for their daughter's memory for congenital heart disease. That very night, a trivia night in St. Louis, Missouri, when I was going to be there anyway. So it seemed like this was meant to be. We happened to be going through St. Louis on our way to a spring break trip. I had already planned to meet another bereaved mom that's in my bereavement Starlight support group. So I was planning to be there anyway. And now this wonderful opportunity to learn about their daughter, support congenital heart disease research, and just support other bereaved parents was right there in my lap. So I was excited to go to this event, which took place the night before this interview. So we will talk a little bit about that event. We'll talk about the book, and you'll just get to know Ella's mom and dad a little bit. But I wanted to give you that kind of amazing introduction as to how this all took place and how I got to do an in-person interview. Thank you so much to Betty and Kyle for coming on the Always Andy's Mom podcast today. As all of you can see, we are doing this in person, which I have not done an in-person interview for a really long time. So I'm really excited to do it, but it's a little bit different. So we'll see how this works.
Yeah, the timing worked out that you're in St. Louis. So.
The timing worked out that I'm in St. Louis, and I thought I might as well do it in person as long as I can. So that's perfect. Mm-hmm. So why don't you just start out by telling the audience all about your daughter, Ella?
Yeah, why don't you start?
Well, we had Ella 6 years ago, so born on April 4th, so her birthday would have been tomorrow. She was a lot of fun. She was
first baby for you?
Yeah.
First baby?
We pretty much had no idea what we were doing as parents. And so she taught us everything we needed to know and a little bit more. But she was getting to that really fun developmental age where she was crawling around and she would point at everything and say, "What's that? What's that?" And that was actually her way of telling us like that she wanted something. Uh-huh. She didn't have enough vocabulary to like say the thing, but she would just point at something and say, "What's that?"
Well, I used to always say "what's that" to her to try and see if she would
like
learn
try
words
to get her
to be able to say what
words.
it is. So then she just started calling everything "what's that."
Whatever, it was effective. When she would point and say "what's that," we're like, "Oh, she would like some fruit snacks," like So, and then later on when she was in the hospital, she wanted to leave the room, but she couldn't leave the room. But so she would point at everything out the window and say, like, what's that? What's that? Like, what if we go check that out, Mom? Like
that seems like that would be really cool.
That seems like a fun place to go.
I think also something that's notable, even though she was only 1 year old, in that time she had seen probably 10 or 12 cities. She was a little jet setter.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. So
you traveled with her a lot then.
Yeah, I think we just had a really active lifestyle, and people were like, oh, when you have a kid, then you're kind of like grounded. And we were like, not quite. Like, we're still planning on living our life. And so, yeah, she went to, oh gosh, where all did we take her?
Portland, Las Vegas, Nashville.
Michigan?
Did
she go to Michigan? Oh, no. Allie and Andrew weren't in Michigan yet.
No, they were still living here. We took her to Branson. She went to, all around.
Yeah.
The local areas where we could drive to easy, but she's
a lot.
She was all over the place. She went to Destin, Florida. She
was on the beach. She loved that.
So fun.
So there was just something about her that made people smile. I mean, not just us, but like when we would take her out, she just had a really big smile. She had big blue eyes. And so I think when I think back at her, I think of when we would like take her into the store and she would just smile at some random stranger and make their day. She was just really...
She was a cutie. I got to see a bunch of pictures last night, so
yeah.
I can tell you she was a little cutie.
Yeah, we do have so many pictures. I think that's one benefit of having her as our first child. Poor Lane, our third child. Uh-huh. We have like maybe a third of the pictures that we have of Lane that we did of Ella, but we have videos and photos, and we're constantly like looking back at those. And
Betty's family was joking like, you take way too many pictures. You're always trying to document all the events. And then after we ended up losing her, they made a comment like, we're so glad that you take all these pictures, and now we are going to make it a point to take more pictures.
They're like, we will never give you a hard time for taking too many pictures again.
Well, those pictures and videos especially can be so precious. Yeah. Right? I think about videos that I look at of Andy when I can hear his voice and hear him talking, and it just makes it so real. And I know even last night you showed that video, and being able to hear her voice too was really precious.
Yeah. We caught some really fun moments of like long before she was really able to talk. She would like babble. And so there was a time where we were videoing and she was babbling on Kyle's lap, and I said, what's she saying, Kyle? And he's like, I don't know. Can you say I love you, Mommy? And she goes, I like her babble just sounded like she said I love you.
Yes.
Which to me is such a precious memory, because I never actually heard my daughter say those words.
Yeah.
But we have that video of her, and it's...
Well, and the other one where she was... What you said, your
say
name?
Ella.
Say Ella. And it really sounded like Ella. And she was way too young to actually be
she's like 3 months old.
She was just cooing. But
she was just cooing, but it was perfect.
Ella.
And it really sounded like Ella. It was awesome. I loved it.
Yeah. So anyway, those are some really precious memories and moments, and I think being able to keep that stuff fresh, and intentionally going back and looking at it is like something that we have really found to be healthy, and especially with her younger siblings, to help them understand that she's a real person. And you can't watch those videos, even though now on this side of it, it's kind of like this bittersweet to watch the videos and pictures of her. You can't help watch them without smiling, because she was just like a little ball of joy. So.
Yeah. Oh, well, good. I'm glad to just be able to talk about her and get a little bit of a sense of her personality, really. So why don't we go into now what did happen with her, because it was pretty sudden.
Yeah.
So why don't you just start talking about that now?
Yeah, well, I'll start and then I'll let you pick up. But we had no signs that she had any kind of an issue until right around...
it was on Easter.
Yeah, on Easter.
Right?
Yeah, she got what we thought was a cold or some kind of a virus. Uh-huh. She just kind of got lethargic. She was sort of wheezing.
And this is 2017, is that right? Or
yes.
Yeah. So we were actually getting ready to go to a family Easter party, and she got sick in the car. We had to turn around. And
we were like, oh no, she's got some kind of a virus. And,
so we were like, all right, let's get her cleaned up, see how she's doing, and maybe we'll just be a little bit late. And
Yeah.
Then we're like, well, we'll wait. And ended up canceling on going out, and then took her to ER to see how she was doing.
Yeah, because we're like, maybe she has RSV. We don't know what's going on. So the ER let us go home because they were like, she tested negative for RSV. Like, we think
and
she's
she's
going to
just about a year.
Yeah,
almost on the nose, probably.
Yeah, very close. Her birthday's on April 4th. So then afterwards, we brought her home. She wasn't doing a whole lot better. The ER had told us just contact your pediatrician in the morning. So I called the pediatrician, and I will never forget. So Ella was sitting on my lap, and I'm on the phone with the nurse, and I said, yeah, she's kind of wheezing. We had her in the ER, and they just said to call you, and so I just need to set an appointment.
Yeah.
It's nothing super urgent. And the nurse said, is that her that I hear in the background? Can I hear her breathing? And I said, yeah. And she said, I would like for you to come in right now. And I was like, okay, that was the first sign that there was anything that was like, red flag.
Yeah.
So then we took her in, and from there things escalated. They checked her oxygen level and said, we're actually going to transport you to the hospital again in an ambulance just because she's not getting enough oxygen. And I was like, oh, this is a really bad cold then. Like, are we sure it's not RSV? But we did not know, and later found out that she actually was in heart failure, and that's why she was wheezing and throwing up. And so she was checked into Children's Hospital, and we stayed there with her for how many days? It's when you're in the hospital, it kind of becomes like a time.
Yeah, it seems like one.
I think we were in there for like 2 weeks.
Yeah. So then
we were thinking like we're gonna go in and then we're gonna head out, and
because they probably at that time still thought it was some viral thing, right? Like a viral induced cardiomyopathy kind of thing.
Exactly. They could see that her heart was big. They didn't know what was causing it, but they were just expecting it to get better, and they were just watching it. So it seemed like she was sort of starting to recover. They did take a blood panel while she was there to see if they could figure out anything else that was behind the scenes.
And a lot of times you just have to do kind of some supportive care for that. Yeah. You give them some oxygen. You may have to try to give them some heart medicine to see if you can get it to work a little better. Yeah. Just kind of, but you feel like time is your friend, right?
Exactly. So that's what the doctors told us. So then she got discharged from the hospital, and we brought her back home, which felt like a breath of fresh air. Like, okay, cool, this is behind us. And then on his 30th birthday, we took her to daycare, and I got a frantic call from someone at daycare that said, hey, we're worried about Ella. Her lips are turning blue. She just is, something's not right with her. And I said, call 911. We need to get her to a hospital. We know she has a heart issue. If her lips are turning blue, like right now, get her to Children's. So then they took her, their protocol was to take her to the closest hospital. So they took her to the one that was right by the daycare. And sure enough, when they got into the ER, they said, oh my gosh, she's not getting enough oxygen. We're going to airlift her to Children's. And so Kyle and I met them at that hospital. We were waiting for the chopper to get there. They told us there was only room for one of us in the chopper. So Kyle drove his car because we knew after having been at the hospital for a couple weeks, like, you need a car there anyway. So even though a police officer had offered to give him a ride, he went ahead and just drove a car there. He was waiting for us. And it took a little while. Once the helicopter got there and the staff was tending to her, they said, we're going to give her a little sedation so that the noise of the helicopter doesn't scare her. And then they were adjusting her oxygen, and she flatlined. And
in the helicopter or before getting on?
They were prepping her to go into the helicopter. So she flatlined, and kind of chaos broke out. And I did not even, it's like in the movies when someone flatlines, there's like oh my gosh, they just died, but for me, I was like, oh, you guys are going to take care of this, right? Like we got to get got a plane to catch, Yeah. So they're doing everything. And I ended up, Kyle and I, he had called to say like, hey, where are you guys? I've been here for a little while. I thought you'd beat me here. And I was like, no, they're just prepping her. We ended up FaceTiming so he could see video, because I was like, they're actually, don't freak out, but they are doing CPR right now. Knowing now, freaking out was totally appropriate.
Freaking out was appropriate.
Freaking out was 100% appropriate. But
you're right, on TV, CPR, they always just like get it to work.
Yeah.
And they
I'm
like,
sure
you like
everything's gonna
get
be
them
fine.
back, right?
Yeah.
Especially
Right.
if like a relatively healthy person.
Exactly.
They do CPR and like in 3 minutes they're all back.
Yeah. So
Totally not
that's
true. Not what real life is like, but it's what you think it is.
That's
if
exactly-
that's the only thing you've ever seen.
exactly. And I mean, I could not imagine a reality where my daughter died. So for
She
me,
was just in daycare.
She was
right?
just in
I mean, she
daycare.
was just in daycare.
She was like-
you don't like go from daycare to
Mhm.
dead
Mhm.
in a couple of hours. That just doesn't happen.
Exactly.
Right?
And people,
Mhm.
I mean, even still to this day, when people see all the pictures and videos of Ella and they know that she died of a heart condition, they're like, oh, she looked kind of normal. Like they'll
Right,
say
right.
things to us like, we're like, yeah, we had no idea. Like we did not know how sick she was. So anyway, I was expecting her to come back. In fact, I was like, baby girl, just wake up. You know, like I went to the head of the bed and they let me, I would always sing the song Que Sera Sera to
Uh-huh.
her when I was trying to get her to calm down if she was like being noisy in a restaurant. And so I was like singing that song to her and I did not even notice when they stopped the compressions and kind of everybody stepped back. I was like still singing. And then finally I realized how quiet it was. And they were like, we're so sorry, but she's gone. And it was just me. Because
Yeah.
Kyle was gone, and so me and all the medical professionals, and I was like, someone please pinch me, because I know that I'm dreaming. I know that this is a nightmare, and I just need to wake up. And
Yeah.
they were like, this is not a nightmare. She's gone. Kyle's on video.
So you were
then-
on video at that point then?
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
So then he had to drive all the way back.
Yeah.
And then they let us hold her, and so anyway, that is how it happened.
So awful.
I know.
Just so awful.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that you just don't believe that it's happening. I mean, I remember thinking the same thing, that this just can't be real.
I
This just
know.
can't be real. And honestly, the feeling of this can't be real stuck around for quite a long time.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember going to my first parent grief support group. Andy had been gone, I think, 15 days. And I went there and I'm sitting there and they're going around the room and people are telling their stories of how their children died. And it's not to us yet. And all I kept thinking to myself was, you don't belong here. You don't belong here. You need to get up and go.
Yeah.
Get up and go. Andy's home. Andy's fine.
Yeah.
He's fine. This is
know.
not you. You are not one of these people.
You're an imposter. You don't fit with this. Yeah.
Like, this cannot be real.
Yeah.
And this is 15 days later. So clearly it's real.
Yeah, we kept having, I would say for months, dreams that she was still sleeping in her crib. I would like wake up to hear her cry. Or I would wake up in the morning after having a dream that she was still alive and have to remind myself
Uh-huh.
that she wasn't there.
Yeah.
Like,
Those are the most horrible things.
Yeah.
And they would come to my head all the time. I would be constantly in my mind would be the words, Andy's dead. Andy's dead. Andy's dead. Because I felt like I didn't really believe it.
yeah.
And I couldn't really believe it because I couldn't wrap my head around it because it was so sudden and out of the blue. And I felt like, you have to get this through your head, Marcy. You have to somehow accept this has really happened to you. So in my mind, it was repeating those cruel, awful words, Andy's dead, just to try to get it in there because
Yeah.
I felt like I just couldn't.
Yeah.
I couldn't accept it.
I know, your brain goes on like self-protect mode. Like,
Yes, which I think is good.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I realize it is a good thing because had it not, and you're feeling that pain every second of every day,
Yeah.
I don't know how I'd get up.
yeah.
I don't know how I'd do anything. So in some ways, it is good, I think, that your body protects you a little bit and not let you feel it
all
at
the time.
every moment,
Yeah.
because feeling it at every moment, just too much, right?
Yeah, but there is this like weird sense of being off balance because there is this, you know, like your brain's telling you one thing, reality is something different, and you're constantly like trying to balance that and
Right, and then you've got this little dream in your head that none of it's really happening.
Mm-hmm.
And then you think, am I going crazy? Maybe I'm going crazy. Maybe I'm losing it.
Yeah.
Because there's a part of me that's just like, you know what? Life would just be easier if I did. If I just lost my mind, went crazy, and lived in this alternate reality where everything was really okay. And Andy had just gone away to summer camp or something, right? I mean, it's just like this. Maybe that would be easier, you know?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, so that's the story of how it happened, and I
So now let's talk a little bit about kind of your grief journey and kind of what that was like and the support maybe from the beginning and how things sort of morphed and changed and a little bit of that.
Yeah, I think right away one of the things we kind of noticed was a lot of our friends and family came along beside us and were supportive and mended relationships that had just kind of, nothing happened, but just went away, and all of a sudden people that were friends long ago were coming back and trying to support us.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we kind of said to each other after knowing people that have had a tragedy and it tears their marriage apart was that one thing we want to make a point of is that this doesn't tear our marriage apart because it's a likely thing that could happen, and it happens to a lot of people. So we wanted to be intentional about that.
Yeah.
We did that very thing. That very night Andy died, we're in the hospital because Peter was hospitalized. And in the hospital, we made a promise to each other, this will not break us.
Yeah. So that's exactly what we said to each other. We said, our daughter's legacy is not going to be ripping us apart. She's going to make us the strongest, best versions of ourselves. And we don't know what that looks like right now, but we're going to figure it the frick out because that's on us. So what we did in reflecting on one more thing to add color to what he said, I consider this to be one of the silver linings of what we've been through. What he described with our network of support, we had people that we didn't even know that were supporting us. And it's kind of like in the circus, the people that are on the trapeze.
Yeah.
Like, you never want them to fall, but when they do fall in rehearsal or whatever and go into the net, I would say I never understood the breadth of support that we had until I felt my weight crashing into it and it flexed around us. And that was such a beautiful, I cannot even wrap words around the supportiveness that I felt when we went through all of that. Now, that is separate from us having to figure stuff out in our marriage, because that is, more auxiliary, the support we felt from so many people. But for us, we had to figure out, what do I need on a daily basis to get through the crazy mess that's going on in my head, and also the fact that Kyle and I are very different in how we grieve. For example, he loved watching videos of Ella, right after she died. And for me, that was very triggering and just made me feel so homesick that honestly, listening to her voice made me immediately feel like I needed to throw up. And so, him having the space to grieve in his way and do things that were helpful for him, and me being able to say, you do that, I fully support you in that. I'm going to just take a minute and be in a different room. I think that is part of what helped us get through this in our marriage. And so also communication with each other about what we needed and what we didn't need, because sometimes that changes by the moment. People ask us all the time, what was most helpful to you in your grieving? And I will say to them, which day, which minute, because sometimes I needed different things.
Yes, for sure.
Sometimes I just needed to talk about it, and sometimes I just needed people to treat me like a normal human. So,
and that's hard for people to guess. Because they don't know what to do. And it's so nice. I love how you said that, is that it depended on the moment, it depended on the day, because just to be open with other people about that I can't handle that today.
Yeah.
Because there are times when I get, I mean, more so now, I enjoy getting little text messages saying, I thought about Andy today, or this happened today, or whatever. But there are still days today, maybe not the best day to have gotten them. It puts me over that point. So in some ways people are in a no-win situation. Yeah. But to be able to say, thank you for that. I really appreciate that. Today, I can't talk about it further, but I would love to be able to do that later when I'm more ready, or communication between yourself as a couple, and then just being open with other people, which is hard, right? I mean, it's hard that you feel like you need to be the one to teach people how to help you, but in some ways you have to.
Well, and you're the only one who can, because this is the thing that we have realized, especially just because our own reaction to grief was so different as individuals, is that this is what makes it radioactive for other folks. Like, they want to help. They don't know what to do. They don't want to say the wrong thing.
Yep.
And so the most loving, helpful thing you can do as a griever is to communicate well. And it is, even though it might feel a little funky to be like, hey, I need a minute and I can't talk about it right now. Like, that is what people who love you and want to support you need and want to hear from you. Like, just be honest about where you're at and what you need, because you're the only person who knows. And it may be different today than it was yesterday. So it's not like we can just hand people a training manual. Like, here's how to support someone who's grieving. Like, really?
Yeah. And I think on that point, people want to help. And so the idea of they say the wrong thing, but you need to just understand that they're saying what they think can help you.
Yep.
And so kind of like the thing behind the thing, like they are just doing their best to try and help you. And if they say the wrong thing, don't let that set you off. Like they're doing their best and they're there to support you. So
giving grace,
give
grace to each other, give grace to people. And I always say on the podcast, it is better to say the wrong thing than to say nothing.
Exactly.
That is the thing that hurts the worst. Because if you have a conversation with someone and it's shortly after Ella died and they like pretend like that didn't even happen, that's hurtful. If they say, oh, she's in a better place now, it may make you mad. And you think, but I don't really want her in a better place. I want her here. They tried.
Yeah.
They tried. And it wasn't a statement that really made you feel better, but it was still better than had they said nothing. Right? In my mind, it is.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Even those things that make you go, oh, why did you say that? Oh, when they don't say anything, it's like, it feels like they don't care. And it's not that. I think oftentimes it's not that at all. It's that they don't know what to say. So they don't know what to say, so they just say nothing. But anyway.
Yeah, no, I also think even just asking, because sometimes, if I'm being really honest, it is nice to be treated like normal. Yeah. Because, being present in those very grief-filled moments is emotionally exhausting. So we have a friend that just recently lost a baby and was really struggling with it. And we went to just go be with her and support her.
Just go be.
And at the beginning of that time together, I asked her, do you know what you need right now? Do you need to talk about it, or you just need to have a normal night? And I feel like that level of acknowledging this, there's a funk, and that it might be helpful to talk about it, but also letting her give us a little feedback
let
on
her drive the night.
Yeah, for sure.
If she doesn't want to talk about it, like, shoot, we can just eat pizza and drink beer and be friends. Like, that is totally fine.
Right.
So.
But that was the great thing to say is, do you know what you need right now? Yeah. And to not expect that she does. Do not say, what do you need me to do?
Yeah.
Call me if you need me. Those are not that helpful. It's more helpful to show up. Yeah. And to say, do you know what you need? Yeah. Do you want to just do this, or do you want to do this? Yeah. Giving a couple options can be really, really helpful. And just knowing that you can just show up. Yeah. You can just show up and just sit there.
Yep. And I'm sure she would be okay with me saying that her answer was, I don't know.
Right.
I don't know what I need. And I told her, that's okay, because we get that. So I said, this is what we're going to do. We're going to have some pizza and some beer. We're going to chill out. If something comes up, you want to ask us a question or talk about it, just know that door's open, but don't feel any pressure, and we're not going to bring it up unless you do. And she was like, that sounds great. We had some really great conversations, but I think just having that grace with people, like, when Ella died, someone asked us to reflect on what would be most shocking to us now. And I think the most shocking thing is that we have now somehow become grief experts that are helping other people. We had no idea what the hell we were doing. Like,
no.
I mean, it feels so chaotic, but no one knows what they're doing. I think that's the best thing. Like, being a grief expert is just understanding that one thing. No one really knows.
Right. And understanding that one thing. I like how you said that too, because I, as my listeners know, kind of thought that I understood grief, right? I lost my mom when I was in college. It was the worst thing I could have ever experienced, but I sort of felt like I made it through the other side. I was leading a happy life. I had all these kids. Like, things were pretty good. And I kind of got that. And if you would have asked me before Andy died, if I felt like I would be sort of prepared if I lost my husband, one of my children,
Yeah.
My brother, it's a close family member. As appalled as I would have been at the whole idea, I would have honestly thought, but yeah, I'm way more ready for it than say my husband is, right? Because he'd never really lost anyone close in his life. Like, yeah, I'm probably more prepared than the average person, but it turns out that was just garbage. That was garbage. I didn't know.
You can't possibly be
You
prepared.
can't possibly be prepared.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got my friend Stephanie, who I talk about on the show all the time. She knew for a long time, I mean, years really, that her daughter was dying. She knew definitely for weeks that she was imminently dying. And yet 2 minutes after she died, she's like, no. I'm not really ready.
No.
I'm not really ready.
No.
So even when you think and you like, I mean, she was going to a therapist and they were doing all this stuff on grief so she would be ready. She wasn't ready.
No. You can't possibly be ready.
No.
But I think part of what makes you, if you can say the word successful in going through this journey, is being real honest about that, and then also having real clear and transparent communication, like with yourself and with the people that are around you so they can support you. We definitely think that professional help is really something that we would recommend to folks. But what we did for ourselves, because we had no idea what we were doing, we grabbed like a moleskin notebook, like just a blank journal unlined. And we would randomly go, we love wine. And so we would randomly go to like Cooper's Hawk and do a wine tasting and say like, okay, what are you thinking? What have you experienced in the last few days or hours that has been helpful or hurtful? Like, what are the big ugly things that are going on in your mind? What are the things that are like bringing joy and feeling like are coming up for fresh air? And then we would talk just over wine. And then I would write just messy bullet points in this journal. And we didn't know, like, there wasn't intentionality behind it. But if we could say anything to other grieving people, like, that was the single most intelligent thing that we could have done, like single most helpful thing, because it helped us crystallize some of what we were thinking. It helped us now, going back on it, we're constantly reflecting on memories of Ella, on things from our grief, and having that document, like that journal where we can go back and flip through, man, what was helpful to us? What were some of the wackadoo thoughts that we had as we were sifting through? And then also, we don't have to just remember memories of our memories of our memories. Like, we wrote down a lot of things about Ella, and while those things were still really fresh, and that was really smart. So yeah, I would highly recommend.
That's a beautiful
people.
thing.
Yeah.
And I know not all couples can have that at all. I think especially on dads. I mean, I've talked to a lot of moms who the dad does not, like, I can't go there. I can't do that. How was that for you, having those conversations?
I think the fact that we were doing it together and not me just trying to start journaling was helpful, that we were kind of having conversations. Betty's a really good question asker.
Yeah.
And so whether she was driving a lot of the questions, and then we would kind of think through, talk through, and then kind of document our thoughts and our feelings on where we're at. But then it was just kind of, I think whether somebody wants to do it by themselves or do it with a partner, that by making that intentional effort helps you think through it, helps you figure out what you need, figure out what was helpful. And I think finding the silver linings thing that Betty mentioned, like kind of going through and finding the good things that maybe not because this happened, these are good things, but like, what are the good things that surround this, or what are the good impacts that person had on your life and everything else. And kind of painting it in a picture of, not this is something I lost and now everything is terrible, but this is something that I had, and these are the great things that came from having that person in my life.
Yeah. I think that's good that you did both things, because I do feel like, I mean, I felt this with my husband, Eric, and I've had a lot of people that I've talked to about this, that you have a bad day, say, and then, and you're at work and you both come home from work, and I've had a really cruddy day, but I look at Eric and he seems like maybe he had an okay day. Like maybe it wasn't a bad day for him. And so then I think to myself, do I really want to tell him about my really bad day.
Ruin his good day.
Ruin his good day. Now, wasn't really a good day, but it seemed like maybe it was a good day. And I've heard that a lot from different people, that they don't want to like ruin the other person's day. So the beautiful thing that I thought that you said was you decided to write down this thing, and it wasn't all negative stuff. No. It was, let's share kind of what was good about today, what was bad about today. So there weren't expectations that it was going to be one or the other. Yeah. So I think that gives you a little bit of freedom in that conversation.
Well, and so I kind of think one thing that comes to mind as you're saying that, Betty asked the question, would you trade lives with anybody right after we lost her? And thinking about it, it was like, we have friends that have great lives that haven't lost their kids. And I would love to not lose my kids, but to trade lives means I have all of the decisions they've made their entire life. I kind of took the question as like full swab, not like, oh, I just get my kid back. And it's like,
right. But that's not what that's not what the question is,
exactly.
Right?
And it's like
trading lives. And trading lives meant you have somebody else's kids and not your Ella.
Right. And it's the way I kind of looked at it was, I have a lifetime of decisions I made on things that I prioritized. And we have this terrible thing that has happened, but I also have a life that is what I chose and what I built and what we've built together then. And it's kind of like, no, I would still pick mine because I have a lifetime of things that are what I have prioritized. And so, but it was just kind of...
And there's a lot of good in what you have.
And it helps, I think, thinking through it that way helps you appreciate the positive things you have versus just saying, if this negative thing has ruined my life, and so I want a different one.
Yeah. I also think as humans, we tend to go to the negative, like focus on the negative. It's like part of how we're wired. I think it's actually part of how our brain protects us from future danger, is to like hyperfixate.
How do I avoid that in the future?
Right?
Like, you touch the hot stove, hopefully once. Yeah. And then you're like, okay, I've learned that's a really bad thing. Let's not do that again.
Yeah. So, you can have like a million beautiful memories. And if you have one negative thing, your brain goes back and revisits that so much more than the positive. And so there has to be some intentionality if you're going to get through something and still be positive to balance yourself. And the way that we did that was we had one page that we wrote silver linings at the top of. And we started a lot of times when we were having conversations, I'd be like, hey, is there anything we can add to the silver linings page? Like someone that we met that we wouldn't have met if we hadn't lost Ella, or something that we remember from her life that is going to, like the fact that I was sharing with you before we started recording that we found out that the thing that caused Ella to pass, Kyle also has that. And that by knowing now what we know, that it is not going to take Kyle's life. She protected him. Really, honestly, she is like a hero for him. So that is on the silver linings page of our journal. Like, we never would have known, and she saved Kyle's life.
Right. Because now you can,
Yes, I get yearly heart checkups and non-medicine to help keep the issue from becoming an issue.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But it won't kill him because now knowledge is power, and we know about it. And so we would take things like that Ella's life brought a silver lining into our life or touching other people, and we would write all those things down. And then the negative stuff we wouldn't like shove down like it wasn't there. We would talk about it, we would write about it. But then anytime we came up with a new, like, oh my gosh, we met another family that we're going to be lifelong friends with, or I mean for real, this conversation that we were having with you, the fact that we were able to meet you, straight down in the silver linings page, like that is so cool.
Well, and I think about even so, I'm on my spring break trip, which people find really funny. I know in my office, like, oh, what are you doing on your spring break? Well, I'm starting out by going to a benefit for a little girl who died from dilated cardiomyopathy, and like, oh, cool, like my husband and my son, we all went to trivia night for a girl who died. That is not how most teenagers spend their spring break. and I met, two other couples and another woman that I'm good friends with. And in all, on this spring break trip, I will be meeting with like 9 or 10 bereaved parents. That is not bizarre normal. And not normal, but it's a huge blessing, right? Yeah. Okay, so now I do have to put in a plug. I think next year we might be going to Spain for spring break. So I tell you, anyone who knows bereaved parents in Spain, you got to get on them right now because
Phone a friend.
Phone a friend.
Phone a friend in Spain and hook them up.
Last year I met one bereaved parent on spring break. This one it's now 10. I've got to go for it in Spain here, and I just don't know how that's going to happen. But
you can make it happen.
I've got to do some major expanding on the Always Andy's Mom podcast.
Yeah, I think you can make it happen.
Yeah, my kids do speak Spanish. Maybe I need them to do translating.
Ooh, that's a good thought.
Yeah, possibility.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
that was a huge aside, but I do want to talk about a little bit about the benefit and how that all started, because this was the third one.
Yeah.
So how did you start doing those?
So as we were talking through everything after we lost Ella, we decided that one thing we could do that would be a positive is figure out ways that we could help it keep it from happening to other parents, so they wouldn't have to deal with the same loss. And so we started an endowment fund through St. Louis Children's Hospital, and then with the goal of raising money for pediatric heart research.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah, and then every year we wanted to do something on her birthday because we want to celebrate her. I think, and we said this last night at our event, but a lot of times people, like, we're really good at celebrating happy moments, and then whenever there's something that's like this weird grief-filled thing, it's like people just kind of shy away from it. And part of what has helped us process our grief well is like not shying away from it and saying, like, you know what, we're going to celebrate Ryder and Lane's birthday, but we're also going to celebrate Ella's birthday, and we're going to make it big. We're going to throw a huge party, and we're going to continue like soaking every bit of good out of her little life because she is worth that. And so anyway, we put together a trivia night the first year, and we raised, it like blew our expectations out of the water. We were thinking like,
$15,000.
Yeah, we were thinking maybe we would like raise $2,000 or $3,000 for heart research and have a fun party. Yeah, $15,000 later, we were like,
okay.
Yeah, I think we pledged that we were going to try and raise $25,000 in 5 years or something like that.
And for the endowment.
And then we
fund.
raised 15 in the first year, and we're like, okay, well, that's a little faster than
what you thought.
This is a good start.
Yeah. And then the second year, it grew. We were like, okay, there's no way we're going to meet what we did our first year. I mean, it's so fresh for everyone. They were really looking for a way to help and support us. But we expected that it would get a little smaller after we had the inaugural event.
We didn't have that initial, like, everybody's gung-ho to support you. Like, they're probably fine. We'll skip it this year.
But then the second year, we raised, what, $17,000?
1,700, I think.
Yeah, I remember as we were counting the money, I just had like tears rolling down my face. Like, oh my gosh, this is not something that is like fading out. Her memory is not fading and going away. It's like getting stronger and building. And then you were there last night.
Yeah.
So not only that, but so our first event we had 280 people at it, and then our second event we had 340 people. So to the point of it not fading out, like, more people were there to support us, and that net grew.
Yeah. And then last night we had 360 seats sold, and it was so amazing. And we are still tallying because honestly, we got home after midnight, and then we're shooting this the next morning. We are fairly confident that we have exceeded that 17,000.
I'd say 100% confident.
Yeah.
Okay, Kyle is 100% confident. My engineer husband.
So one of my friends from college, he texted me a couple days before the event. And he's like, "Hey, would it be okay if me and a couple of my coworkers got a picture with you?" And their company bought a table. So I was like, "Oh, company bought a table, so that's part of their philanthropic donation." I was like, "That's fine. That's great."
Yeah.
And he's like, "We have a check for you." And I'm like, "What do you mean you have a check for us?
You already paid for your table.
You already paid for your table."
Yeah.
And he's like, "Oh, we do a fundraiser, and so we have another donation." I was like, "Okay." So then we get there, and he explains that they pick a beneficiary for their quarterly donation, and so he proposed the Ella Marie Endowment Fund, and they picked it. And so anybody that participates, a portion of their biweekly paycheck goes towards whatever that philanthropic donation is going to be. And so they gave us $4,126 just to start the event off.
Right.
So,
When he pulled the check out, both Con and I, he did have like a big check.
Yeah, it was one of
printed.
those big checks. Yeah.
And my eyes just like filled up with tears.
I thought it was $400, and I was like, wow, I can't believe you guys raised
$400.
$400 for us. And then I saw the other digit, and I was like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
I think it's just, we always say that every parent hopes that their child will grow up to change the world.
Yeah.
And we have a front row seat to seeing how our daughter's life is changing the world. And so it's just like not what we would have chosen, but it is still beautiful.
Yeah. Right. Exactly right. It isn't what you would have chosen.
Yeah.
And if you could take it all back and take her back, you would in a second.
Yeah.
In a second, you
Yeah.
give it all up to have her back. But since you can't.
Exactly.
Right.
We are going to soak every bit of good out of the situation.
Right.
We're going to honor her. We're going to celebrate her little life.
Yeah.
I think we wrote those exact words down.
Yeah.
About as close as you can.
Yeah,
Like,
right. And that's the thing, and I think that is an important thing to do because that's what a lot of people have a hard time with. Like, I remember thinking at the very beginning, I don't want there to be anything good with this because this is just awful.
Yeah.
This is awful, and it has to be 100% awful because somehow in my mind at the very beginning was like, if good comes of this, then I'm somehow saying it's worth it,
Yeah.
and that I can't do.
No.
that I'm happy this happened because look at all this great stuff.
Because look at all the great stuff that happened. And, you know, and I do have people tell me all the time, like, your podcast is so great. Like, I would switch this podcast
Yep.
for Annie in
Absolutely.
a second. I don't even care, right? I would take it back in a second. But since I can't,
Yep.
then I need to do the best that I can possibly do with it. And this is something I can do with Andy. And that event is something that you can do with Ella
Mm-hmm.
every year. It's something with her. It's still, it's still being her parent.
Yeah.
You are her parent when you do that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's still cool is because a lot of times you feel like, I'm not really her parent anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not his parent anymore. But this is something where you can be.
Oh,
right?
yeah. People last night, when we're introducing ourselves, they weren't like, oh, this is Betty and Kyle. They'd be like, oh, these are Ella's parents. Like that.
Yeah.
And it is really neat in those moments to have that as part of your identity. It's not this thing that was in the past and now it's been washed away. It's like we will always be that.
Yeah. Yeah. Just like always Annie's mom.
Yeah.
So now we need to move on because I need to talk to you about the book because you have also written a book and I know you didn't want to really focus on the book,
Yeah.
but I am excited to kind of help launch that book because the official launch was last night at the event.
We went live.
And I know you can get it on Amazon, but I want you to talk about how the book came to be, how people can get the book, just about what that is too.
Yeah. You
Yeah,
want to tell them the title?
So we named it Unraveled When Loss Changes Everything.
Yeah.
And we named it Unraveled because our experience, and I think something that's kind of misunderstood, is grief doesn't just happen and then it gets better. It kind of comes in waves. You have, to your point earlier, you said you had good days, you have bad days, and that's totally true. And it's kind of, you don't know how each day is going to be, and it's kind of an unraveling of figuring it out. And so, like,
Life as you knew it, totally unraveled, right?
right.
Mm-hmm.
And so kind of our source content for the book was that journaling that we did.
Yeah.
After we had been working on the journal, we started getting connected with other families. Hey, my friend lost a child, whatever. Can you talk to him?
Uh-huh.
Sure.
Mhm.
So we'd bring the journal and we'd talk through different things that helped us and hopefully try and trigger some kind of memories that they can kind of find similar things in their life. And then we started getting feedback like, this was the most helpful thing. I wish I had a book that I could just hand someone. And we're like,
Yeah.
maybe we should turn it into a book. 'Cause we can't handle this journal to somebody because
It was just sloppy.
like
Yeah.
nobody will know what any of these bullet points mean unless you like each is a bullet point that has a story behind it. And
Yeah.
so basically we needed to convert all of these different bullet points and all these different notes into what the stories are. So
Yeah, we had a number of people encourage us to, they were asking like, hey, could I just take a picture of this page of your journal? Because this was really helpful to me. And we'd be like, sure, you can take a picture, but it's like messy and, you may need context because the bullets were like half thoughts and they would be like beauty in the dusting because that reminded us
Heck,
of a
there
story.
might even be tears on the page, right?
Yeah, or wine. You know, like
Or
a
wine,
lot of the pages have wine. Let's be real. But so what we did was we said, okay, if this is truly helpful to people, we are not interested in writing like a memoir about our story, but we are interested in, there seems to be a gap and people don't know what to say when folks are grieving. And we somehow have found ourselves in a position where we have a little insight on that. And so if we were to sit down and think about if our best friend in the world went through something epically awful and we had all the time we needed to think through what would we say to that person beginning to end. So we just took our journal, we organized our thoughts, we said, okay, this is what we would say to someone. Let's write this down. And then now that has become this unraveled book, and it is intended to really stand in that gap when it's like something awful happened. I don't know what to say. I would love for my person that I care about to feel supported and like they're not alone and they're not crazy. What can I do? You can give them a copy of this book. That's like the best thing that we wrote a book that would have been helpful to us when we were going through our grief.
Right. And I think about even people that are listening that are going through this. Honestly, it might be a good idea for you to buy 10 copies of the book and hand it out to all of your friends, right? To hand it out to everyone and say, you know what? This is just so you can kind of understand maybe what I'm going through a little bit and what you might be able to do to help me. Or to read it yourself and to get that permission, because it's really hard to build up the courage to say, yeah, that wasn't really helpful.
The right
to
moment.
Me, right?
Yeah.
That wasn't the right moment. I think about my dear, dear friend, Michelle, who was awesome and wonderful. And she sat down and prayed with me before Andy's funeral. And she said something about hoping that the funeral would be God honoring and be bringing people to Christ. And I actually had the courage to say to her, don't say that to me.
It's not the right moment.
It's not the right moment. And I really do hope, and I do know that our service was very God-centered, and I have heard stories that it has helped bring people to Christ and helped people in their faith. But that wasn't the goal. And that cannot at all be the goal for me in that moment. For me in that moment, it was a faith-based service because that's what Andy deserved. And because I needed to talk about that part of him. Yeah. But it wasn't at all because I was somehow being altruistic and thinking about saving the other people. Because in that moment, I wasn't. And so as much as that seems like maybe that's a good thing to say, it probably isn't. It might be. For some, it might have been amazing. But for most people, you need it to be about them in the day-to-day. Because if you start putting pressure on them, like now somehow this funeral has to bring other people and help other people's faith, that is way too much pressure to put on a newly bereaved parent. Yeah. Way too much. You can't, it's just a bad idea to do. Yeah. So those are kind of some of the things I think to help people think of a little more of the day-to-day. Yeah. What is going to help me today? Get through today. Not thinking about eternity, not thinking about the way down the road. Yeah. It's what gets you through.
Yeah. I think one of the things that came out as we were writing the book is that there are so many things that seem like they are at odds with each other as you're grieving, like direct ends of the spectrum, like obviously the extreme grief of losing her and also all the joy and beauty that has come out of her life. Yeah. But I think there's just a ton of darkness that is coming right up against like brightness, or just like complex emotions that kind of butt up against each other. And those are some of the things that, like, as we were writing in our journal, we did not have it figured out, but we started realizing like, hey, nobody's got it figured out, and it's actually helpful to just say some of this stuff out loud. Like,
and then it's okay to feel 18 things all at the same time.
Exactly. And it's okay for you to go from like crazy snot down your face crying to like laughing hysterically in moments. Like that's okay. And
that's why it can be so nice to spend time with other bereaved parents, because they're so okay with that.
Yeah.
They're okay with you crying and then laughing.
Yeah.
And no one's like, when you're crying, they're not saying, oh, really?
Hopefully she gets over
Here's
this soon.
a tissue. Try to wipe it away. And if they're laughing like, oh, good, we don't have to worry about her anymore. She's finally okay. You know?
Yeah. Well,
yeah. Right.
So something else that we realized afterwards is, even though as the parent, you are grieving the hardest, but you're not grieving alone.
This is a good point.
Didn't realize it at the time, but later realized that some of our parents were dealing with depression, and they were grieving loss of a grandchild.
Yeah.
We had all kinds of family.
Because they don't want to put more on you.
Right. They didn't want to make it our thing.
For me, it was my kids.
Right.
They want to protect me so much. They're going through so much themselves and so much grief, and it's affecting them. And yet the people they normally would have turned to, us, they don't want to, because, I'm just going to make it worse for her.
Additional.
Right.
And that's like watching your children grieve must be horrible.
Yeah.
I mean, I know watching my children grieve, their brother was horrible.
Yeah.
But for your parents, watching their children, you guys, grieve,
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's terrible.
And we had a friend that said that they started taking anti-anxiety medication because
They have kids the same age.
And so they just had this going through their head, like,
That
this
all
happened
does
to
this
them.
to
This
my
could happen
kid.
to anybody.
Yeah,
like
this could happen to anybody.
I just think, not that as a grieving parent you need to go and be the support for all these people.
No, because you can't.
But
It's too much weight,
but you could. But I mean, you can go through this with those people.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think
support them while they're supporting you, and just being
right,
aware.
and being honest and open, and that communication is just so big, right? So I think that helps too with the book, to be able to be like, this is how I'm feeling, and then they can be maybe more okay saying with how they're feeling, saying how they are.
Yep. So there's no magic sauce. I mean, I think the biggest thing that hopefully comes out of it is just understanding and knowing that it's not like some process. Grief is not like you just walk through these cute little stages and then you're...
Oh yeah, the 5 stages of grief. This one, and then you're done.
Gosh, I
no,
hate that.
you're going to experience all of them, but you don't know
And
when.
maybe all on the same day.
Oh,
All on the same day, or maybe one day you don't have any of them, but and they will happen randomly, and it'll be a messy
Messy.
web of feelings.
But I will say this. I think part of the beauty and another reason why we chose that Unraveled is because we understand that our lives are not demolished or shattered or obliterated, but that they've kind of been unraveled, but it can be woven back together. Like we can still have her as part of our lives, like her siblings, even though they never met her. We can weave her back into their story. And so that is one of the things that we are working on doing with this, like with the trivia night, that we brought our other 2 kids out to watch the video.
Yeah.
So that they could see her, because we want her to be part of their lives. So not broken beyond repair, but we do use in the end of the book, there's an analogy of kintsugi. I don't know if are you familiar with kintsugi art? It's like a Japanese.
No,
Okay, so what they do is they take broken pottery and they mend it with gold. And it really kind of shines a light on the fact that there is beauty in brokenness. And so we can never fix it. We'll never go back to the way things were before. And it's not even that helpful of a thought process to be like, what if? Could we change it? No, we can't. And so instead, we are going to mend the cracks with gold. And we are going to make something that it is beautiful. Like it has its own added beauty because of the brokenness.
Right.
Because that's all we can do.
Right.
So,
well, thank you so much for sharing, Ella, with us today. I really loved the trivia night, and I can't wait to read the book because I haven't gotten to read it yet. So I look forward to that. So thank you so much. And if you all want to get it, I know you can get it on Amazon.
Amazon, it's actually available via Ingram Spark, which is who distributes to like Barnes and Noble and probably Target.com. Like any online book reseller you'll be able to access it from their site, hopefully. So either Amazon or BarnesandNoble.com. Just search for Unraveled When Loss Changes Everything and you'll be able to find it.
All right. Well, thank you.
Oh my gosh, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. If you found this helpful or would like to support the podcast, please leave a 5-star rating and comment. To help financially, you can text Andy's Mom to the number 53555 or visit the donate page on andysmom.com. Your donations are secure and tax deductible, and we are now able to accept Venmo, PayPal, and Apple Pay. Always Andy's Mom is a registered 501c3 organization and can receive donations through smile.amazon.com, Thrivent Financial, and Benevity, amongst others. Marcy loves hearing from listeners. Please feel free to reach out to her via email at marcy@andysmom.com. Also, be sure to sign up for the email list to receive weekly updates as well as pictures of all of Marcy's guests and their children. Together, let's work to inspire hope, one day at a time.